for the 200th episode, what do I want to do? Get some guests again. Used to have some really fun guests. Everybody who joined, welcome aboard. We'll see how this goes. And sadly, I don't have my computer screen mirrored to the phone yet. I know how to do it, but I don't know how to get TikTok to read it. So if anybody knows, let me know in the comments there. I'm watching your TikTok comments, so hopefully I can see what's going on. Boy, that white screen is not going to do me any good. But anyway, hey, I don't really use TikTok much, mostly for BMX videos and stuff. So I know there's been more and more pro audio stuff on here, and so I got to get on here somehow. But we'll see how this works. And just having the phone pointed at the computer screen really sucks, and I know it. I'm sorry. I'm going to deal with that as best I can, as soon as I can. And anyway, let's get started. And sorry if you can't hear it that good. I'm using the other mic. Okay. Welcome to Evidence-Based Audio number 195. And this is, Did Your Cap Get the Clap? And I'm sorry, but there's no way I could leave this off. So with the new acronyms coming out and stuff, I mean, come on. What are you supposed to do? So anyway, let me start out with a TGP thread, the gear page. And the original post is titled, How Long Will Pro Tools Remain the Industry Standard? So the guy says, I'm looking at learning Pro Tools for valuable experience since it's regarded as the industry standard DAW used by the pros and top studios, etc. Despite this, many sources I've read say that Pro Tools is a bit dated in comparison to other DAWs these days. I'm wondering how long it'll be considered the industry standard and why it became that way in the first place. Do any top studios or pro-level musicians use other DAWs, for example, Cubase, Reaper, etc., or is it pretty much expected that you need to use, or at least know how to use, Pro Tools if you're going to be taken seriously as a pro in this game? Do you think any other DAWs will eventually take over Pro Tools' mantle of being known as the industry standard? Man, some of you guys know how fun I thought this was. So, let's be real. The reason Pro Tools really got taken in, okay, first of all, they made sure they were in every educational institution that mattered at the time. And they also made sure they were in every studio that needed to be there at the time. And back then, the native stuff just wasn't quite so strong, but it wasn't, it was probably first with a lot of stuff. The DSP stuff was really made things possible. I mean, you couldn't run a million tracks back in the day. And, warts and all, it was the best thing for a lot of years. And there's really probably no reason for most people to have left it in the first place. All that said, let's just let's look at these questions one by one. I've read say that Pro Tools is a bit dated in comparison to other DAWs these days. It's been dated since about 2001. I mean, most DAWs, you could do so much stuff that you can't do in Pro Tools. But then again, Pro Tools had routing that you didn't have in other plugins. It had really low latency, had DSP to run things. But, something as simple as dragging and dropping audio or mono versus stereo tracks. It was horribly behind in these things, but not necessarily in a way that really mattered. I mean, if you wanted to replace your tape recorder with a DAW, Pro Tools could do it. There's a little bit of hardware latency, but not much. And you guys, I mean, if you guys know me for a long time, I was at war with Pro Tools long before we started developing Reaper. I just hated the thing. I couldn't stand using it. I was forced to use it in a lot of studios. It was so slow for me by the time it was really running. So it's hard for me to say these things, but it's true. There's a lot of pluses of Pro Tools. And I just recently heard a podcast with Vin Curliano from DawBench, where he talked with the original developers of Pro Tools, and these guys were cool as hell. I never knew of that. I mean, all I knew was a bunch of schmucks that the schools would send out that were just absolutely terrible. That said, we always had a very up-to-date modern Pro Tools system, and we could use it. I just didn't like to. So it's always been kind of dated, but that may be why it's so stable with people. All right, stop swiping me. It's TikTok. I'm trying to use TikTok for once. Okay, do any top studios or pro level musicians use other DAWs? Okay, now that's a whole nother story. So when you're talking about scoring, orchestras, stuff like that, tons of people are using other stuff. When you're talking about movie sound, people are using other stuff, though Pro Tools is still pretty big in that. When you're talking about video games, now, the video games industry puts the music industry to shame. I'm sure you guys know that. They're using other DAWs. Obviously we've seen what these video game guys are doing in Reaper, like in Call of Duty and stuff like that. If you're an artist and you don't care about bringing it into the studio or whatever, use whatever the hell you want. And, it's not hard to get waves out of whatever program, but if you just want to be able to hand off a project and have people not have to do anything, in theory, and the way it's sold, if you have Pro Tools, you can just do that. Of course, it's not true because you're going to have different plugins and things like that, and some of the settings aren't quite right. But in general, you can just hand this thing off, and somebody else will be able to open it up. We've got all these translator programs, so it's really not a hassle, but it is one more step. So, if you really, really, really just want to hand something off, it's still probably Pro Tools. At least in most studios, at least in the bigger studios. I can't be bothered we test in Pro Tools for our plugins and stuff, but it's not something I want to do. I'm not going to use by choice. Okay, hold on, let me just make sure we're good. Okay. So the other one, is it pretty much expected that you need to use or at least know how to use Pro Tools if you're to be taken seriously as a pro in this game? Depends. If you want to go work at a big studio, you better know how to use Pro Tools. If you want to record bands all day long at your own place, if you want to write music, if you want to score, if you want to do that kind of thing, don't worry about it. Use whatever you want to use. But, it doesn't hurt to know how to use Pro Tools. Do you think any other DAWs will eventually take over Pro Tools' mantle of being known as the industry standard? I kind of doubt it. And I don't think it matters. I mean, we exist fine without using Pro Tools for the most part. And studios are a tiny, tiny part of what actually happens in this industry anyway. So it's up to you. Yeah, so here's Dunedin Dragon. Dunedin Dragon? I'm not sure. It says, I think Pro Tools status is more of a legacy of the way studios used to work and not terribly consistent with how modern studios tend to work. Again, yeah, because modern studios tend to be small and just moving quick. They don't really care about this stuff. It's still in use in most of the big name studios, but that's driven more by the studio's installed base of recorded material. That too, if you don't have the tape machine that'll pull up an old song, you're kind of in trouble. However, professional big name studios are a rather small cross section of the recording industry. Yep. Most of these type of businesses shut down and have been replaced with much smaller boutique studios. But the fact that so many recordings are done in private studios or home environments, it's really hard to say anything is an industry standard anymore. You know what's an industry standard? Wave files, VSTs, to some extent audio units and AIFs or whatever you call them, other files. It's the files themselves that are the standards at this point. Except for Pro Tools, everybody can use VST plugins. And in fact, you can even kind of use those in Pro Tools as well, sort of. Everybody can use waves. It sucks that in Pro Tools you got to import them or something, but let's see. From what I've seen, the industry standard might be more dependent on what type of work is being done with it. Certainly, Ableton Live is an industry standard for anything that's being done for live productions, and that's true. You're not going to touch live with Pro Tools. Others have their own particular segments they tend to be specialized for, so I think Learning any DAW software starts first with where your emphasis will be, then finding the one that best fits. Yep. Let's see, somebody else is saying, if you want someone to fly in parts or send tracks elsewhere for mixing, PT is widely considered to be the language spoken by pro studios. Yep. This is a weird thing. In my opinion, if there were only one or two competing DAWs, then they'd be able to give Pro Tools a run for its money. But with so many different choices, PT remains critical mass in bigger studios. I don't know if that's the reason, but it's a good point. Okay, so this is a funny thing, and anybody who's worked with me over the years, or actually, you probably know this is not really all that true. As someone who's been using Pro Tools since its inception, I confess to being biased, but it's the industry standard for a reason. Are there people who prefer the workflow in other software? Sure. Are there better MIDI-based systems? Yup, probably. But for the whole package, for the ability to compose, produce, record, mix, and master at the highest level, Pro Tools wins. If you haven't spent years with it, you don't realize what it can do. I confess I still don't know anything, but anyone who asks me what software to use for music production, I say hands down Pro Tools. Let me see, somebody else said something about mix. I'm trying to find the editing. Oh yeah, here we go. Okay, so here we go. Not to reiterate from above, but Pro Tools is king when it comes to editing, in my humble opinion. And you guys know, I think it was the worst. Sure, you can do it in any other DAW, but not with the speed and ease. No way. I'm talking more of once you've recorded tracks and really need to get down to the business of editing and production, setting up some powerful mix templates that are easy to follow. Those are different things, but I'm telling you, editing in Pro Tools was the pits. Let's see. So I answered this because, yeah, and it's other Miroslav already answered. You should check out Samplitude Pro X. It's better for audio editing, and many PT users have come over to Samplitude have been amazed at the capability and features that PT didn't have. Though I'm sure by now PT has copied some. The object level editing in Samplitude is way ahead of the game. That's true. We bit some stuff for that in Reaper actually. People talk about latency. Let's see. Sorry, I'm trying to fix a little buzz here. So I said, I was responding to this editing thing, and I said, I can think of one DAW that was specifically created because of how slow and poor PT Pro Tools was at editing. At the time, when you moved items around in Pro Tools, you couldn't even see the contents as you dragged them until you released the mouse button. It was pretty much the reason for all the complaints about how spitty and clunky crossfades used to sound. And that's another thing. Auto crossfades in Pro Tools used to be pathetic. They may be better now, but you couldn't see the audio as you're moving it. That made the thing absolutely useless for me. I know there's ways around it. You can nudge and all this stuff, but it was crap. And I actually just ran, I got Pro Tools Ultimate for testing our plugins, and I just ran it. You still can't just drag and drop waveforms in it. Like a joke. But the editing is better. You can see the waveform now as you move it. It still feels weird, but it's okay. This is much better than it was. And so that's the other thing. I expected DAWs to have matured so much in the last 20 years or so. Reaper's not quite that old, but it's getting there. And when Reaper started out, it had the routing setup. Nobody could touch it. Not even Pro Tools. But I expected that everybody would have that kind of routing now, but we're working on a Noisegate plugin for somebody that relies on a sidechain, and the sidechains on these other DAWs are a joke. I just don't get it. I would expect so much more out of this by now. And it's weird, but I'm sure I've probably said this story a million times before, but some of you guys know this. I used to play a fun game with the Pro Tools reps and the teachers from the recording schools where we would edit toms, me on Vegas at the time, and Pro Tools experts on Pro Tools. I'd finish, drive down to 7-Eleven, and bring back coffee and donuts for all the students so they could watch their teachers struggle with this task. I would get done so fast, and these guys would still be on it. I mean, the editing on Pro Tools was terrible. I don't know how that whole thing went. Another guy says, what's the I/O latency of a Pro Tools hardware rig? About half a millisecond at 96K. What's the lowest latency you can get with a native rig? That's why it became industry standard. And yeah, if you want to work at super low latencies, Pro Tools is still damn good, man. It wasn't zero latency though, but yeah, the ecosystem is already there. Anyway, so let me get on to this next thing here. So I don't know if you've heard of this. So this is Clap, the new plugin standard. So Bitwig and Yuhi are excited to announce Clap, Clever Audio Plugin API. The new open standard for audio plugins and hosts. Clap offers modern features, innate stability, and rapid support for plugin and host developers. And since it's open source and liberally licensed, Clap is a safe bet for the future. Do we need another format? But then again, like when we wanted to go do VST2, it was a hassle because Steinberg decided they didn't want you to make VST plugins anymore. They wanted everything VST3. And at the time, that was a problem. VST3 has matured a lot since then, but is it good to have one company in charge of this stuff? But even with this Clap, with the open source or whatever, does that mean that they're not going to just do something stupid later on? But let's see. Advantages of Clap for musicians. Developed in collaboration with experts from diverse fields in the music software industry, Clap is a cutting-edge plugin standard designed for modern computers, software, and paradigms. Clap caters to a novel DAW concepts and opens up new horizons for what plugin can do or be. I'd love to hear some specifics, but so he's saying better performance from modern CPUs. And John Tidy just put out a video testing this stuff, and that doesn't actually appear to be the case. But developed with modern CPUs in mind, Clap takes multi-thread management to a whole new level, which is actually a problem, but it's more of an OS problem, isn't it? With a clear and efficient allocation of roles between plugin and host. Specifically, Clap allows collaborative multi-core support between plugin and host through a so-called thread pool, also allowing hosts to manage CPU threading for plugins that provide their own multi-core support. Preliminary tests show significant performance gains. A better and faster organization. Clap hosts can read plugin metadata and help you organize your plugins. Yeah, I don't really care. That's nice, though. Better modulation. The Clap standard promotes new ways to create music with automation, modulation, and expressions. Here are a few examples. Clap supports per-note automation and modulation in accordance with the recent MIDI 2.0 specs. That's interesting. Going one step further, Clap's parameter modulation concept allows for temporary parameter offsets. Parameter modulation is non-destructive, so as soon as the modulation is finished, the target parameter will return to its original state. So that's, I wouldn't doubt for a second that came from people using Reaper. My YouTube keeps crashing. iPhone issues or app issue, I don't know, but I'll be trying to listen. Oh, sorry. Okay. So I'm pretty sure this parameter modulation is going to be like how Reaper does it, which is cool. Clap makes it possible for polyphonic plugins to have their per voice parameters modulated for individual notes. I don't see why you couldn't do that with VST, but okay. Information for plugin developers. So they're talking about the API here, but Clap is an open source release under the MIT license. No fees, membership, or proprietary license agreements are required before developing or distributing a Clap capable host or plugin, and the license never expires. In a nutshell, there are no entry hurdles for developers, and plenty of open source projects already benefit from Clap. MIDI just works. Inspired by MPE and MIDI 2.0, Clap can adapt to any future MIDI standard. Well, that's kind of a claim. But I guess you could adapt if you can code it, but that's anything could, right? Wherever a solid standard exists, we allow developers to freely decide how to apply it. Nice. Plugins can receive and send any MIDI events on multiple ports. Yeah, but you could actually, so Poo Ninja is asking, so poly pitch perfect shifts like Eventide if you can code it. You could actually do that on VSTs or whatever. I think this is opening up some like per voice automation stuff, which is, again, you could still do this on other VSTs, but maybe this is going to be by default. A simple system for extensions makes Clap future proof. Companies can offer proprietary extensions if required for specific features. So anyway, you can go in there and start grabbing stuff, and companies and projects to watch out for. Following companies and projects are already evaluating Clap for their host and plugin software. Well, you guys are behind, man. But it's showing maybe even Avid. We were just talking about iPlug 2. So, if we look at Reaper 6.71, which came out, when did this come out? Yesterday, the other day. One of the things that it says in the release notes is Clap, add support for Clap plugins. Support Cockos.Reaper _extension, which returns a Reaper plugin info for Reaper API access. Okay. So there's a bunch of stuff for effects, actually. So I'm gonna leave the Clap for a second and read this in Reaper 6.71 release notes. Add project setting to auto bypass plugins that report tail length with user-defined silence threshold. So I wonder if this is for like rendering stuff, so you don't end up with tails cut off or way too long. Add per instance setting to auto bypass plugin uses automatic tail detection if plugin does not report tail length. Add compatibility setting to force automatic tail detection, allowing plugins to opt into the project auto bypass. So interesting. So is this actually a performance thing where if you're not using the plugin at the time, it'll automatically bypass and save you some CPU? We talked about this during Reaper 1 or possibly before, that turning on and off this engine, might be a little bit scary. It might cause some problems, but be interested to see where this goes. And so, of course, John Tidy's got what's new in Reaper 6.71, and he's talking about the Clap support and auto bypass for effects, and that he's showing it effects auto bypass to reduce CPU load. Computers are so strong now, but then people have like 5 billion tracks running, so maybe that's why. I'm gonna check that out. I'm not sure that I really need it for most of my stuff, but that is an interesting thing. But the main part is he talks about testing Clap and using Clap plugins in Reaper and the performance that he's seen in this. Okay, so we're asking about this title here. Did your cap get the clap? So we're going to talk about capacitors here for a second, and this is kind of a long read, but I'm just going to try and sum this up. So there's a thread on the gear page, and man, I hate to chew on a company because it's possible that these guys could actually be destroyed over this. But these people have already reported things to Sweetwater and some of the other companies, so I'm just going to read it here. So the thread is called With Genuine Paper and Oil Capacitors. Okay, you guys know that many guitar players believe some absolutely bonkers crap, and one of the things they believe is you got to have these like magical capacitors, and what these are is it's your tone knob on your guitar, if you have one, works by a resistor and capacitor network, and it's pretty much what makes this thing work, how it filters and low passes your sound, or how much treble it bleeds off, or however it works. But they believe that, like anything else, if it wasn't made in the 1950s, it's no good. And so you're dealing with a religion that it's pretty nuts, and they're actually ripe for exploitation, because if they believe in like Tonewood and special magical unobtainium tubes and stuff, you can sell that stuff to them at crazy prices. And so one of these things that they want is these old paper and oil capacitors. That's the way some of these were made, and they think it's going to make them, one of the funny things is when people point out is that people obsess over stuff like that so that they don't have to spend their time actually making music. So they got an excuse for why they don't got any songs out. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. But anyway, so let's read this. Like a customer brought in a 335 type guitar he tried to install an upgrade kit in. He gave up when he broke a lead off of one of the capacitors trying to shoehorn the harness through the F-hole. Labeled PIO, as in paper and oil. Sure enough, the website says with genuine paper and oil capacitors, your guitar will have the classic sound of a vintage ES335. Let's have a look then. So he's got a picture here, and it's obviously a sleeve that somebody called, man, should I even name this company? I'm kind of scared. Not that they're going to come after me, but if it turns out that they're a little more innocent than people thought, I don't want to get them fried. But anyway, they put their own sleeve of their own company over this capacitor, like a little plastic sleeve, so you can't tell what the original is, or maybe it's just to advertise their stuff better or whatever. They charge a premium price for these things that you could probably get for pennies back in the day, maybe dollars now. But so they've put a sleeve, like imagine somebody took a can of, it's probably wine is probably the best analogy. So somebody took some like cheap wine, I guess, and then put a sticker over the original stuff to make it say that it was some super expensive wine. Some people rebrand stuff. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's if you're lying about it. And here we go. So when the guy peels it open, he finds a Mojo Dijon capacitor underneath there, which is probably also a sleeve wrapped over something else. But it is a cheaper capacitor. And so he says, oops. So apparently what happened is these guys were faking the capacitor that they said they were selling. It's not a paper and oil capacitor. It's a metal foil or whatever, as if that makes any difference. But it's just the principle of the thing. They shouldn't be lying about what they're selling and upcharging majorly for it. So I'm pretty sure this Mojo Dijon, let's look this up. Mojo Dijon capacitors. So it's this company called Mojo Tone, who I'm sure probably sleeves these things themselves. I mean, do they actually build them themselves? I doubt it. I mean, maybe they do. That'd be crazy. But I'm sure it doesn't cost much. Let's see. Guitar parts. Parts, electronic parts, capacitors. Okay, here we go. Yeah, so even their own capacitors are $1.25. So that's what's in there. And apparently these ones that this other website is selling, it's like for $25. High-end vodka. Buy a cheap and triple coffee filter and filter it yourself. Is that what makes vodka better than other vodka? Is that it's filtered better? So anyway, these capacitors, they don't cost that much, but look at these, like the Bumble. So I think these might be paper and oil, these Bumblebee capacitors. They look like old Gibson caps. They look more like resistors, honestly. $27 for them. It's crazy. But this is the cap. This is where this capacitor actually came from. And it's $1.25 part. And these guys are charging a lot more and lying about what they are. And lying, just lies up and down. So somebody answers, why not? It's all nonsense in a guitar circuit to begin with. Yes, it's true, but it's the principle of the thing. So somebody said, I took a screenshot of the photos and wrote to the company an email suggesting they change their advertising to reflect those capacitors as being film and oil. Wonder what the response will be. Let's go. So somebody else says, man, it doesn't get much more blatant than that. This is Hall of Shame material. You have to think that by the time they've made and applied the outer cover, they're saving maybe $3 to $5 per cap and putting an entire business's reputation at risk. I can't wait to hear the response you get from these people, if any. A fool in his money. Okay, so this guy says, and this is true, at least there's a cap under the shrink wrap. Could have just had a wire instead and still fooled a lot of the gear page. Sure enough, had that not even be a capacitor, all these professional guitar players at the gear page would have been turning up and down the knobs and pretending they heard this giant change. And 1,000% not cool. Why rip off people like that for a few extra dollars? Let me know if your customer is in need of some. So this guy's got his own paper and oil. I was just about to order a Strat harness from this company on eBay. I've changed my mind now. This is the type of thing I like to show customers, those expensive upgrades. And okay, so here it starts. I see they're backpedaling pretty rapidly. They have made unavailable the 920D custom E335 wiring harness upgrade, paper and oil capacitors, $149. And now they have the 920 custom ES335 wiring kit, $109.99, which features the WD Blue Tone capacitors, which are not listed on the WDmusic.com website. Interesting. Somebody else says, repackaged Mojo Tone capacitors. Shame. I've contacted them before about their ads. They also advertise CD orange drops as Sprague Electric orange drops. Let's see. Go to the next page because this starts to get interesting. All right, so here we go. And I don't know if I want to say these names. Let's just say Jimmy here with the company in question. Gentlemen, during the pandemic, we ran out of every type of capacitor we use for every build that we make. The world cap supply pretty much dried up. And yes, we've talked about this so much before that parts are scarce right now and have been for a while. And I had to make some tough decisions. Should I have shut the business down and put my employees on unemployment, or make a few substitutions here and there to keep things afloat? I bought every cap I could find from anywhere and anyone that had caps. Mojo Tone was and still is a great source for me, as well as All Parts, WD Music, and all of the electronic wholesale houses. It was pretty grim there for a while, and we're just now getting back to normal. I'm currently working on a very expensive manufacturing deal for 6,000 paper and oil caps. We expect the product to be available in about 90 days. In the meantime, I've acquired a limited supply of new old stock K40Y9 caps to fill the gap. I'm happy to send you K40Y9s to anyone who received the wrong cap. Show me what you have and where you purchase it, and I'll take care of you. So already, okay, so this is a huge question here. Should I have shut the business down and put my employees on unemployment, or make a few substitutions here and there to keep things afloat? That's not a tough decision. No, don't shut down the business. Just tell people you're using a different cap, and good. That's sorry, we can't get this cap anymore, so we're not advertising it anymore. And here you go. This, and guess what? It'll sound exactly the same. But no, they wanted to lie about it. So it turned, the Dijon caps are film and foil type capacitors. Okay, and so somebody, of course, this is something that you might have heard before called the knotpology. So he says, feels like they've been wrong, in quotes, when you're caught being completely fraudulent. I have bought 2 of your harnesses in the past. Don't worry, I'll never make that mistake again, and will be sure to tell everyone I know not to either. Yeah, but don't you go blind from drinking moonshine? Okay, sorry. So he's back on behalf of our company. I apologize for this mess. I understand that substituting caps isn't the best practice. I was put in a bad position by supply chain shortages, and I made a bad call. I own the decision, and will deal with the fallout. Call me to exchange caps. It's still really it's not really an apology, but at least he's saying, I'm taking full responsibility, and I'm good with that. So somebody else says, surely someone had the time to update the descriptions. I don't care that you subbed parts. I do care that it is misrepresented. Supply shortages don't explain that away. Yeah, it's true. He says, you're correct, Bill. We were fighting for survival and time slipped away. We should have made those edits a lot sooner. It's my responsibility to make sure the listings accurately reflect what we're doing. This guy's he's saying that the buck stops with him, which is good. I failed to realize the importance of correcting the listings in a timely manner. I don't believe that, but whatever. It's my fault. Again, taking it. We're taking corrective steps now with the listings. My offer to replace the cap stands. I'm here to make things right. And what else can you do at this point? Well, it turns out you better clear it up on the website. But all right, so here's one person says, I've thought about this for a bit since I posted this earlier. Frankly, all this seems to be is an attempt at damage control since you were caught. What happens if this guy hadn't posted this story? I also built, okay, so one of the ones is, and I just got to say, what's the harm? I don't know if you guys remember the ADE bomb detector that everybody, all the pro government nut jobs were talking about this thing. It's supposed to detect bombs. I think you like put a picture of the bomb on the end of an antenna, and somehow it's supposed to find a bomb. So bad, so bad. Got a bunch of soldiers killed. Probably a lot of innocent people, civilians and stuff too. It's just such a piece of crap. And it's the same thing. But, now I understand that I got caught. No. Okay. Anyway, sorry. Let me go back. So this guy's saying, I also built assemblies during these past few years. And while there was a shortage of some items, you could get almost anything if you either, one, looked hard enough, or two, paid a premium for it. You could have also pulled those assemblies from the market that featured paper and oil caps if you couldn't find them. That's what you should have done. There was another alternative, and that was to be transparent. You claim supply chain, yet it seems you had no difficulty obtaining caps from Mojotone and then having them turned into counterfeit paper and oil caps. That was counterfeit. Does Mojotone have an issue with you using them for their cheap caps and passing up their more expensive PIO caps that were available? Does Sweetwater realize that they have bogus counterfeit PIO caps on their shelves that they're advertising to people? So now this is a whole nother level. Okay, so Sweetwater's involved. I guess Sweetwater sells this stuff, is a reseller for this company. Now that's a big deal. If you don't know Sweetwater, they're one of the biggest music retailers out there. Definitely got to be the biggest online one. There's Guitar Center and Musician's Friend, but I don't know if anybody really trusts that stuff that much. Does Sweetwater... Are you going to tell your dealers you've been screwing them as well? Dealer price for your assemblies is also higher due to these misrepresented parts. I just took a look at your site. You've also falsely advertised your orange drops as Sprague, and they haven't manufactured them for a decade or more. Your pictures also clearly show that they're made by CD rather than Sprague. You are even selling them separately. Here's the top description I pulled right off your site right now. And it says Sprague orange drop capacitors. We've used Sprague orange drop capacitors in our builds since day one. You're using this as a marketing tool, a false one. Truly, the leader in custom harnesses would know the difference between new old stock Sprague orange drops and standard CD orange drops that you can get anywhere. I doubt there's really a difference, but it's the misrepresentation I have an issue with. There is other marketing BS, such as advertising 920D pure tone jacks. They're the same as anyone can buy, and nothing special. Well, that's kind of normal. It appears it's all a sham. There's been time to correct this issue. Currently, Mojotone has over 2,200 22 microfarad, 0.022 microfarad paper and oil capacitors, and almost 3,400 of the 0.047 microfarad paper and oils in inventory. I quickly checked CE distribution. They have paper and oil in stock, and they're only a few dollars each. How long were you planning on lying to the public, to your dealers? When will this get cleaned up? Let me get this out of here. Okay. $15. Okay, so let me get to where this gets interesting again. Somebody says, and this is kind of how I feel, sort of. I think everyone needs to take a moment to appreciate the Jimmy guy actually showing up to own this, and that's not something that happens too often. It's true. Usually they just sweep it under the rug. The struggles of small businesses trying to survive the entire world shutting down for 2 years shouldn't be minimized. We should also ease up on acting like we've been so harmed over something as ephemeral as whether it's bougie caps, guitar caps we brought were really paper and oil or not. It's likely from placebo effect that the cool labeling on the caps in question makes a bigger sonic difference in our minds than the composition anyway. Yeah, I mean, it's true, but again, these people were defrauded. So just because they were defrauded on snake oil that turned out to be lizard oil, but I mean, still. So more people complain, I'll never buy from you again. Character is what you do when you think nobody's watching. Okay. See, somebody else says, when I was building a Jaguar parts caster, the company, same company, sold me a harness which advertised Switchcraft switches, and none were Switchcraft. They also shorted me the cloth wire and substituted caps, values, and brands. Doesn't surprise me that they pulled the phony baloney crap cap stunt. I wound up building my own harness with the parts I wanted, which I should have done in the first place. And oh yeah, they sent me a wiring diagram that needed correction. Nice. All right, so I'm going to try and get through this kind of. Let me move. So yeah, the thing is, they're calling them out. Are you cool with someone lying to their customers, charging them for parts that they aren't delivering? No, of course not. Now here's where I am. Which is worse, the scam of PIO caps, which most of these religious nuts on the gear page are guilty of, or the scam of paper and oil caps that aren't paper and oil caps? That's funny, but okay, so this is probably more along how I was thinking. This is from Pick Plucker. While I'm usually impressed when someone just owns their stuff, I will only note that I understand getting in a jam. I understand how hard all the pandemic restrictions were on the little guy, but COVID covers more sins than vinyl siding. And what these company did not do, which was also an option, was to own up to their issues in the beginning. Instead, that was done by repackaging and mislabeling the caps, was to make a conscious decision to engage in conduct that meets the classic legal definition of fraud, i.e. an intentional misrepresentation of a material fact. It wasn't a different PIO cap that got rebranded. It was an outright attempt to misrepresent. Despite the explanation, excuses, and offer to make good, this is not, this is, this is not addressed in any response from the company that I read. I'm of the opinion that all the nonsense about caps is another Tonewood kind of thing that is either just myth, marketing, or, and I don't discount this in the least, just something that I'm not really sophisticated enough to notice the difference. But whatever the reason, and whether or not there's a difference, people do put stock in it and pay for it. And to mislead so egregiously is really sort of unforgivable. I feel for the tight spot, and I also have made enough bad choices in life to understand that some things there's just no fix for. It's a shame to have worked hard to build up a reputation and then have it all come crashing down on you because of one bad decision made in a time of extreme stress. But that is what it is. They'll recover or not. But it's a much longer road ahead than for them, and the consequences for both the company and its employees are much worse than might have been if they had just been honest from the get-go. I don't think there would have been any problem from the get-go. They just wouldn't have sold certain caps, period. Like someone pointed out, integrity is what you do when you think no one is watching. It's also something that once the perception of is lost is extremely difficult to recover. The whole thing is a shame. So here, I know some of you guys were already thinking this. So this is a Taverner said, an interesting thing would be if anyone here has a harness from before COVID and is happy to take a closer look at one of the PIOs. Yeah. Okay, so I gotta, there's a lot of pages here. But things get interesting again. I'll get to them in a second. I'm just clicking through the pages. Sorry. It'll take me a second. Yeah, somebody says it's like the reveal scene at the end of a Scooby-Doo episode. Maybe it was a paper and oil before the heat shrink was cut off. Schrodinger's capacitor. Okay, take that, quantum nerds. Let's see. Okay, so now here comes the owner of the company. So that wasn't the owner. That was an employee. So he says, hello, I am Chris. I own the company. I am writing to address a very serious issue that I was made aware of today. So he's saying he didn't know anything about this. And guess what? I'm okay with believing him. I don't have any evidence to the contrary. And I know that the, TGP is always going to have all their conspiracy theories. And so definitely he knew about everything. He's the evil mastermind and he caused 9/11. So, but he may be telling the truth. But anyway, over the past 2 years, there have been many supply chain issues that all of our companies have had to navigate. In the heat of the pandemic battle, Jimmy, the manager and public face of our company for the past 10 years, made a critical, serious mistake. His judgment was poor when he decided to switch from our original paper and oil capacitors to standard caps and continue to advertise them as paper and oil. Let me be clear about one thing. No one in our company except for Mr. Jimmy was aware of this decision. This is his claim, and I know you TGP guys can't believe that it's possibly possible, But he's saying it. Nobody in the company knew except for this guy. And I'm sorry, you got to give me evidence to tell me otherwise. And thanks from Poo Ninja about the Scooby-Doo. I'd have gotten away with it too if it weren't for you meddling guitarists. And that's true, man. How are you going to get away from that? That's actually pretty funny. So let me continue. She says, had I been aware of this poor decision, I would have immediately made the change clear in all of our listings and product descriptions. Further, during the time of the pandemic, our company had laid off almost all of our employees, so there weren't too many hands to help cover all the bases with our many varied selling channels. We were all trying hard to keep our business from sinking, and it's in times like such as these when poor decisions are sometimes made. That's no excuse for the deceptive decision that was made by Jimmy, and I will be addressing that with him immediately. I make no excuses for what happened, and he didn't. I know you guys are all freaking out, but he didn't. I will do whatever is needed to remedy the situation with any customers. I will address the matter internally in a way that is swift and decisive. Thank you for taking the time to read my note. And, honestly, I mean, what else could you do? But of course, the conspiracy theories of the gear page, the same people who believe in tone wood and magical capacitors and all this other nonsense, they're going to go full conspiracy right away. So one of the guys says, so we're to believe that this Jimmy character hand makes every single fraudulent paper and oil without anyone else knowing? Could be. It's not going to be a giant company. So somebody else says, that's not quite right, though, is it? Your firm didn't just advertise these caps as paper and oil. They took affirmative steps to dress up camouflage a far less expensive type of capacitor and sell it as the more expensive type. This is not just misrepresentation, it's outright fraud. In my opinion, the first step in a real and true accounting would be to stop referring to what happened as a mistake or unfortunate accident, and I agree, and label it as what it is, a knowing, deliberate attempt to defraud your customers. Yeah, I mean, this is bad. The second step would be to provide a complete and honest account of exactly what steps were taken to perpetrate the fraud. In particular, it's rather hard to imagine that Mr. Dar could have, been the only individual involved unless he procured the fake wrappers himself, manipulated your company's invoices and or industry inventory records himself, wrapped the capacitors himself, and handled the shipment of orders himself. Is this really the case? Yeah, I want to see a post from Jimmy that says, thanks, I just got fired. Hey, I wouldn't be surprised. We'll see. But, it could have very well been one guy doing all this. And you conspiracy nuts don't understand. Like, if you ever dealt with the government or a bigger company, it's amazing what kind of crap they can pull. So it's showing the Mojo Tone Dijon capacitor is $1.25. And this company's one that they were claiming was a paper and oil, but was really a Mojo Tone Dijon capacitor. It was $28. So he says, this is the problem. Cheap part, huge upcharge, total fraud. It would have been so easy to just say they couldn't get the oil paper cap. I appreciate the guy owning up, but I'll never buy from them again. Let me go on. I don't want to make you guys sit through a bunch of stuff. Play the paper and oil cap uncertainty principle game. What you buy might be paper and oil, or it might not, but you won't know what you have until you cut off the heat shrink, because you sure as hell won't be able to tell with yours. So again, you guys, okay, it was wrong for them to rip you off, but if you guys created this market of nonsense by spreading all this anti-science crap, so you're partly to blame for it, honestly. Let's see. Still got a stash. Okay, it's going to take me a little while. I have to get back to... So this guy says, people who can't solder their own wiring harnesses and who pay a premium for paper and oil capacitors deserve to be rinsed. I bet if OP's customer had not broken a cap and installed the harness, he would be boring all his friends senseless, pointing out the subtle variances that paper and oil caps for him, imputing into his tone. True, that is exactly what would happen, but it's not their fault for not soldering. They're paying somebody to do it. Sorry you don't have good enough years to discern this, but this just listens to those transients mids right there. And unmusical blues bends for 10 minutes at a painful volume. Yeah, I can definitely see this. Let's see. Yeah, you're not owning up to anything when you get caught red-handed. let's see, they show a little Scooby-Doo thing. To be clear, misrepresenting a product is never okay, even for something irrelevant like cap composition in a guitar. At the very least, they should have Sharpied out the PIO part of the writing on the string cover. Yeah. But you know, I say this guy answered that thing about if you don't solder your own. Look, I'm a solder jockey. You know, that's my thing. But that doesn't mean that I expect everybody else to solder stuff. It says I wire guitar amps in my spare time, but I just do not enjoy wiring guitars. So I often buy harnesses. Sorry. There are lots of reasons to buy a pre-wired harness. Okay, so now somebody else is asking, please post the date when your company started doing this. I have bought several harnesses from you over the years and would like to know exactly what I got. So, you know, okay, I mean, he's right to ask for this, but you know this guy has actually been out there telling everybody that he's got this amazing tone from these capacitors that probably aren't even what he claimed they were, but he's out there claiming it, you know. Yeah, somebody else. I live with a condition that makes it difficult to solder for long periods of time. I can solder a couple wires to a jack with no problems, but it gets ugly for me making multiple connections. Look, stop being the victim. Jesus, 12 pages. I just want to catch the parts that make. Very nicely written long post by the owner. Sounds like a classic damage control PR, except he missed the most important thing, an apology. Yep, tells you all you need to know about the company. Stay clear of this company. Ouch. So now I have no idea how big this company is. It sounds like it was down to like less than 5 employees during the COVID time. I'm not sure. It says, well, I'm sympathetic because in a company with the organizational size and complexity of these guys, it must be hard to provide oversight of all the different departments. I don't think it's got that many. It's frustrating when you find out that the guy on the 7th floor who's been running your guitar electronics and wiring division for all these years has been acting like a cad while your eye has been elsewhere. It does, however, explain the print fake paper and oil wrappers and cover film and foil caps with fake paper and oil wrappers expenses that you were going to query about him at the next board golf day. You guys all think that this stuff is accounted down to the fraction of a penny. It's not. I mean, remember the $800 hammers? Get out of here. Honestly, why are you and Jimmy telling people to contact you to remedy the situation? You should be proactively contacting everyone affected because presumably you know when this started, the expense report, remember, and offering them a full refund plus replacement cap for those who want it. Now would also be a very good time to fess up about any other little supply chain issues the company may have had because I predict your products are about to undergo a tsunami of scrutiny. Maybe. And we're going to talk about that in a bit. So the original poster, or one of them, said he just checked the website. There's been some changes. And one assembly still claiming paper and oil caps. But Sprague orange drops are now called orange drops. Let's see. Sorry, this is taking me a little bit. It's a lot of crap to get through. It's funny because there's a lot of people on there that agree with me about, you know, this is just nonsense, this capacitor stuff. But that doesn't mean these guys should have been ripped off. So hopefully we're getting close. I'm just looking for some key posts here. And I should have them soon. The victim blaming. Okay, so there was a claim. Okay, so this is from the owner again. Hello again, everyone. I've read through all the posts on this thread, and I completely understand the outrage and frustration. I was first made aware of this matter on Wednesday afternoon, the day before Thanksgiving. On that day, I promised that I would look into the matter in great depth and take quick, decisive action. That has happened. Our offices and production facilities were closed on Thursday, Friday, and through the weekend. We began addressing this issue first thing in the morning, and our official response can be found at this link. And please accept my humblest apologies and make me work with each customer to make this right. Okay, so somebody took an issue with that. He says, could you please post the blurb here? Since when I went to your site, I was greeted by 17 scripts running on that page, and I'm not in the mood to authorize them all, just to read it. Immediately follow up by clearing my cache of tracking cookies that I'm not all that interested in. And let's see if we can find it. So hold on. And yeah, you're going to see the website now, but sorry, there's no way around that. So I'm on their website. I don't see anything about this problem. I mean, maybe you could find it somewhere. I don't see it. I see a bunch of pop-ups and crap. So somebody else posted it. Capacitor resolution form. Published on November 28, 2022. On November 23, 2022, we were made aware that our ES 33550 LPJS, blah, 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 wiring harnesses had been built and not sold as advertised. Due to poor judgment during a season of supply chain issues, again, excuses, man. These items were built with standard film and foil capacitors with a label applied to them stating they were paper and oil capacitors. The online listings also described these items as being built with paper and oil capacitors, but they indeed were not. Once our leadership team was notified of this issue, we immediately moved the products from the sales online. While some batches of these products were built correctly, several runs were built using the wrong capacitors. To correct this critical error, we are offering a variety of solutions to anyone who purchased a wiring harness built with these misrepresented capacitors. It is our immediate goal to rectify this situation and correct the wrong that has occurred. These options include a full refund with the return of the item, a brand new replacement, or a store credit for the total price plus 20% extra. If you purchase one of the following SKUs between July 20 and November 2022, fill out form below. And he's got the serials on them. To determine if you have the correct harness or one that needs to be replaced, please refer to this page. And he goes back to that page again. Please accept our sincere apology regarding this unfortunate situation. Stop saying unfortunate. It is our goal to build and promote quality products that we can stand behind and be proud of. We have failed to do so in this manner. There's no excuse for an error like this, and we're truly sorry this happened. It's not an error. Please direct any comments or questions to the form below. Blah, blah. And somebody posted Megadeth's Almost Honest as a reply. And you know, that was recorded at my old place, and it's still one of my favorite guitar sounds anyway. So a 2-year run before they got caught. Wow, at that length, I'd say there was willful intent to mislead. Glad they're trying to make things right. Regardless, they've lost a customer here. Hoagie, you deserve the first ever The Gear Page Investigative Journalism Award. Good work humbly exposing this so it didn't continue unchecked forever. Yes. Yes. So somebody says, again, here comes the conspiracies. So it sounds like Jimmy is playing the scapegoat and the company is saying he did all this without their knowledge. Sure. It's perfectly possible. The other guy says he must get one hell of a profit share. He may. And it's a crazy coincidence they stopped doing it the same month they got called out for it. So how big is this company? So first of all, they're saying they're too little. Yeah. All right. See, Ninja. Especially a company that's large enough to have an owner and entire leadership team that is completely unaware of what they are and what they aren't ordering. You guys really think, man, this is okay. We've talked about the Dunning-Krugers of this site before, but yeah. So somebody else says, I've been checking their website, Facebook, and Instagram every day since they first entered in the conversation here. I don't expect them to announce it, though. I'm going to talk about that in a second. So they're talking about how you can't even find that apology on the website. So he says the link provided here works, but I can't navigate to it on their website. Unless I'm missing it, the only way you can get to the forum or find out about this fraudulent caps is by using the link here on the gear page. Now that's bad. Bad. Somebody else says that's the way it looks to me too. If you're not reading this thread, you'll never know that the fancy ass paper and oil you spend a bunch of cash on is just a cheap old POS like the rest of us use. Sorry, that's. So he says, I'll be interested in what happens. I've messaged Sweetwater, who carries them, and Guitar World via Instagram about this issue. Curious if something is said. I think whatever goodwill and or credibility they had was trying to get rid of by offering refunds is dead. More and more just looks like a company trying to save face and spin an issue to get created. They still have paper and oil caps for sale. Look different than the fake ones they'd been selling, but are they real or just the old copy? Games are still being played. Last Wednesday, 920... Oh, sorry. Said they were working on a deal for custom paper and oil caps, but were a month away. How could the company have them now for sale? More deception. That's actually, if you have dealt with apologetics for as long as I have, you know there's actually some explanations for that. So I said, okay, here's me, and I'm going to get fried for this. We can't know whether the higher-ups knew about this. Please don't just jump straight into the gear page conspiracy stuff. And somebody says both the shop manager, who the owner blamed, and the owner have both admitted on this thread that the caps are fraudulent. But again, that's not what I said. The owner said he didn't know anything about this until the other day. This isn't a 200 employee company, just a handful of people. And those two people have admitted the caps were fake, the higher ups. So you guys got to pick. Is this giant company where everybody would know every single thing that everybody's doing? Or is this a tiny little company? And so I said, that's not the claim I was objecting to. Are you saying he knew previously that they're engaging in this? We need evidence for that. And I don't think anybody gave me any. Let's see. So somebody else says, if you didn't know, then you aren't paying attention to your business closely enough to be certain that the guy managing your business isn't pulling stunts like this. Bull. I do apologize, but I call BS on this. Bull. It happens all the time. You either knew or didn't care or didn't know and were not paying close enough attention to what was going on. In either scenario, you're asleep at the wheel. Bull. You don't know everything that's going on at your company. Sorry, you can't. In fact, legally, you'd probably be in trouble for trying to know a lot of things are. Of course, Blue Jazzoid said, here's a new song, Misrepresented Capacitors, explains it all, sung to the tune of Careless Whispers. Now, you probably should go over there and check this out because this is pure genius. So remember the song Careless Whispers, so that George Michael or whatever, or Wham or something? It says, I feel so unsure as you take your cash and ship me, tone to die for, to the upgrade mind, paper and oils divine. But now I find you substitute Dijon for $27.99. I'm never going to enhance again. I paid for tone, but all I was given, a cheapo cap and a fancy wrap, and now I feel a fool. Should have known better than to trust the trend and waste my hard-earned cash so willing, so I'm never going to enhance again and buy my caps from you. That's awesome. Awesome. Somebody else said, by the way, I forwarded this thread to my Sweetwater rep, and they're kicking it up the chain to look into it further. I'm sure I'm not the only one, but just making note of it. Okay. And so somebody's answering me about, we can't know whether the higher ups knew about this. Please don't just jump to the straight TGP conspiracy stuff. He says, I agree we don't know enough specifics to know exactly who knew what when, but this idea that it was an act of a well-intentioned, if misguided, desperation by a single employee with no one else involved really does beg our belief. Now, again, that's a straw man. I didn't claim that it was a well-intentioned act. I just say that I think maybe some of these guys live in Europe and where things are just so micromanaged and you're just completely told what to do all the time that they really think everybody knows everything, like Big Brother or whatever. That's not how it works. At the very least, it implies a disturbingly lax attitude towards inventory. No, it doesn't. Companies like them obviously have to closely track their consumables. Buy part X, use, sell part X, buy more part X. Part X can't just magically morph into part Y without causing inventory anomalies. It can. It really can. Remember the $40,000 washer or bolt or whatever that was. If this was really happening over the span of 2 years, then at the very least, their accountants have some explaining to do. They may, or they may not. But here's his evidence, and I'm inclined to, take this seriously. It gets even more far-fetched when you consider that someone had to procure or create Part Z, which is the fraudulent wrappers. It's not like there's any legitimate or innocent reason for those to just accidentally appear out of the blue. They had them. They already had them. They were already wrapping those things. They were wrapping the other paper and oil ones in, so that's not really surprising. But there are things like that aren't that exact example that probably need to be thought about. Somebody else claims there is no way only one person in the company had knowledge of that for 2 years. That's not true. And so here's how I answer, because we've had plenty of stories where you've watched me get totaled by Facebook and YouTube for, they were busting me for using my own speaking voice, not copyrighted songs, but they're all claiming that's copyrighted material of somebody else's. And so I say, so are people actually under the impression that Mark Zuckerberg was aware of what the Facebook Content ID teams was doing to me, and then later to many more like Rick Beato, where they were accusing me of intellectual property theft and blacklisting me, muting me, and banning me for using my own speaking voice and drum sounds coming out of my own studio? Seems like many here have never had to deal with the government or a big company assuming some sort of magical omniscience by the owner or higher-ups. That's true. So are they saying that Mark Zuckerberg actually knew what these guys were doing to me? I don't think so. So somebody tried to answer me. The shop manager admitted doing it. The owner said he was unaware. Yes, that's what the owner said. The actions they've taken since the owner came on, offering a refund but hiding the information from everyone, doesn't pass the smell test. I don't care. That's not the claim I was making. I was saying the owner says he didn't previously know, and I need evidence for that. And this is not evidence for that. And then in response to my Facebook thing, you're saying this isn't a big company, apples to oranges. Okay. Well, if it isn't a big company, it's way the hell easier to hide this stuff. And somebody else, this total douche, like, okay, now how many times I got banned from the gear page for saying something like this? He says, are you under the impression that Facebook is selling wiring harnesses? No, dumbass. Like, why would I even, why? You're just being an idiot. Somebody else asks, how come when I go to their website, I couldn't find any links from the menu that's related to this issue? Yeah, they're hiding it. Somebody else said, repeatedly calling it an error is rich. Well, it might be intended to mean an error of judgment. It also implies that it wasn't intentional and that the caps were mistakenly labeled paper and oil. No, yeah. Okay. So somebody says there are 45,000 full-time employees at Facebook. What's your guess for these guys? Maybe 25. It doesn't matter. Again, you guys are trying to play it both ways. Either it's a big company and they know everything, or it's a small company and they don't know anything. And so I say, I have no idea. But for instance, the size of a company does nothing to change the ability of people to read minds. It doesn't. So I want to talk about this one. So, we're talking about this with one of my engineering groups. What would you do to save this company? Can the company even be saved? Or is it even in danger and the idea is just some kind of forum in a dark corner of the internet? Now, I don't know. I really probably shouldn't name this company, but there was a company who was very popular, who everybody on this stupid forum constantly drools over and says how great they are, that had a problem very similar to this. And instead of dealing with it, in fact, we offered to fix this for them for free. They just said, this is a dark corner of the internet. It's just some forums. Nobody cares. And back then, maybe that was true. Nowadays, people are so, they spread stuff so fast. So I don't know. But it happened before, and I'd seen it, watched it with my own eyes. I saw a very skilled guitarist get accused of plagiarism who wasn't even close to guilty of it, but his career was over. Even like 7 years later, many YouTube channels won't even have him on. It's nuts. In this age of cancel culture, once you're exiled for blasphemy or some other heretical sin, you have no chance at redemption. There is no forgiveness. In this company's case, it won't be facing cancel culture, but maybe beyond salvation. And it's true. Like, think about how many people who had their lives canceled. There is no forgiveness. There's no way back for them, you know? And, so can this company be saved? You know, I don't know. It's a really interesting question. Is there anything that they can do, to keep going? And, somebody says the company will probably be fine. As far as we know, the only people aware of this business practice are the people participating in this thread. Their, air quotes, apology is not even public. The biggest question will be whether or not Sweetwater continues to carry them or not, as I imagine that makes up for a good portion of their sales. Some other idiot says, I assume anyone blathering on about cancel culture is worthy of being ignored. Well, good. Enjoy your echo timbre, idiot. And so I actually repeated this. There's a company who gets slobbered all over and praised on this very forum, and many others who, once upon a time, around 2004, decided that it was only a dark corner of the internet on a few forums that caught them behaving very poorly, so they chose to ignore it and keep up the fleecing job, and they're doing amazingly well and constantly recommended here on the gear page, so who knows, they could ignore us here and be fine. I too wonder what Sweetwater will do. So somebody says, cancel culture seems to be modern society's version of a lynch mob. That said, ethics and profits are mutually exclusive. That's not true. You can make a lot of money by being ethical. I mean, that's the whole point of virtue signaling, right? Maybe they're not being ethical, but they're pretending to be ethical, and they make a lot of money off it. I know the other counter saying is get woke, go broke, but that's because they get caught faking their virtue signaling. Says, and I think they exemplify that mindset with fake paper and oil caps. There is zero justification for the fraud that was committed and to which they admitted in this forum. What other parts may have been substituted? At this point, it is, in my opinion, impossible to regain trust, and the company should fold, with the owner facing litigation for fraud and potentially be barred from doing business again. But that's just me. I like transparency and honesty above profits, and that partly explains why my own business remains very small. Again, I don't know that the owner knew anything, but holy crap, what a mess, huh? What do you think? Let me know what you would do if this was your company. What in the world could you do? Is it even savable? Interesting. All right. Well, that's enough for me today. I'll see you guys.